Welcome to South Coast Working, the voice of working people and those who continue to build the South Coast each and every day. From the docks to the mills to the classrooms to the roadways, working people add a voice and life to southeastern Massachusetts. Brought to you by the UMass Dartmouth Arnold M. Dubin Labor Education Center.
I think it's safe to say 2020 will be a hard year to forget. Businesses closed and all schools moved to remote learning. In one way or another, the pandemic affected us all. Being forced to shelter in place made gigs like Instacart or Uber Eats even more convenient. But while these companies are making millions of dollars, gig workers continue to receive wage cuts. On this episode of A Silent Partner, the truth about your favorite rideshare companies, the Labor Education Center has partnered with student interns and journalists as we explore the efforts being made to end the injustices gig workers across the nation are facing. Let's talk about why we love apps like Uber, Lyft, Instacart, and Postmates. It's simple, the convenience. Both drivers and consumers love how easy and hassle-free it is. For consumers, they love to know they can have a cup of coffee delivered to them by the press of a button, groceries delivered to your house if you don't feel like shopping, or knowing you have a ride home at 3 a.m. just by having an app installed and battery life. Whether you're on board for how technology is advancing or not, we are here. My name is Kortni Smyers-Jones, and I'm a multimedia journalist in the Chicago area. I love storytelling and talking to people, which is how I ended up in the podcasting profession. When I first learned the Labor Center was doing a podcast on issues in the gig economy, I was instantly curious. I'm like the rest of the world when it comes to convenience. I take advantage of it. But when I learned about the serious issues in the gig economy, especially for rideshare and delivery drivers, I put myself in their shoes. Riders aren't the only one to appreciate the convenience of these apps. It's given millions of Americans jobs. According to Fortunately.com, more than 1/3 of the U.S. works in the gig economy as either a side or main job.
I actually used to work in HR. I had nothing to do with any of this about, I would say maybe like 6 years ago. Ended up losing my job. And like a lot of people who ended up in the gig economy, it was not a plan. It just kind of happened. And I was like, well, I'll do this for a while until I can find another job that I, am okay with. And basically started doing it full time back in 2016.
This is the case for a lot of drivers in the gig economy. This is Lori Simmons. She's an organizer with the Chicago Rideshare Advocates and organizes for the People's Lobby in Chicago, Illinois. But before being an organizer, Lori was just a normal driver who wanted to earn an income while in between jobs.
I was able to do pretty well at it for a while, and I really fell in love with it because I loved talking to people and driving around the city, and there was, tons of things I liked about it, pick your own schedule.
At the time Lori started, workers' rights weren't an issue because those companies were paying drivers livable wages. In 2020, Uber cut drivers' mileage rates from 99 cents a mile to 68 cents a mile. The ride-sharing driver's guide's data shows it's now down to 63 cents a mile.
We didn't have any thoughts about workers' rights at the time. We were new to this, so we were just like, we're getting paid fine, so it's okay. And then as time went on and they stopped paying us, then it became clear that, oh, right, we don't have any worker protections and we don't have any wage guarantee and we don't have anything at all.
Gig workers all across the nation were noticing the pay difference. Pay differences that affected families, like Felipe Martinez. Felipe is a rideshare driver for Amazon, and an organizer for the Boston Independent Drivers Guild, which is an organization founded to protect drivers and win union recognition in Massachusetts.
Signed up with Uber and Lyft as some ads that they have that I could be a partner and be independent and have the flexibility that I want.
Felipe ran his own business before he started driving for Uber and Lyft. He wanted to spend more time with his kids, so he took a break from his full-time business and drove part-time at night.
Right now, I'm just, organizing the drivers. Close to 3 years ago, a lot of us started to see different similarities with the app and how it was working against the drivers. So we all just started to meet each other and start connecting with one another.
Lori and Felipe liked the idea of having their own schedule, so Uber and Lyft sounded like a great gig. But the longer they stayed with the company, the more they realized the companies had no intention of protecting drivers. Dr. Katy J. Wells is a post-doctoral research fellow at Georgetown University's Global Cities Initiative, and right now, researching urban development in the age of Uber.
One thing that's really powerful in the gig economy has always been the unicorn story, not of the company, but of the worker, right? Oh, my cousin's uncle, sister, they made $1,000 that one night, right? And that story circulates and it has power. But what doesn't circulate as often are the number, and, it's very, we're so shocked, and we have numbers in our studies about 78% of drivers have never had a meal with another person who works for the same platform.
I know a ton of people who decided to be delivery drivers with apps like Instacart and Postmates because of what they heard from others or what they saw in advertising. I Googled delivery jobs and clicked the DoorDash ad. Plastered on their home screen is a screenshot of $941.22 in weekly earnings. So it's not hard to guess why people decide to work in the gig economy. I asked Felipe how he heard about the rideshare industry.
It's just the radio ads, word of mouth, people saying that they're making a lot of money and close to $50 an hour. And I think when people see the money, it's a common denominator that not all of us make the right decisions. We sort of go with things without thinking them through. It was a new technology. So you could, if you were a driver, you would receive, at the time when I started driving, $700 if you signed someone up. So it's money. So it's a referral bonus. And that's how they got a lot of drivers. You sign 10 drivers up, 10 of your friends, and they do 50 rides. They get $1,000. You get $700. 10 people times $700, $7,000. Money talks. And then people were very anxious to sign people up.
In the U.S. alone, Uber provides jobs to about 2 million people. My first thought was anyone making this kind of money?
And, obviously once they had enough drivers, then what ends up happening is the algorithm changes in which they don't need everybody as much anymore. As Uber drivers, we can't make our own rates. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that we don't make our own rates. They make our rates. They direct us in where we're going. They direct us on how much we're making. The algorithm is a cheating system. And the drivers are being manipulated in a sense to make decisions based on the money that they're making now and maybe don't understand how the organization works.
Felipe wasn't the only one who realized the algorithm was the boss. So did organizer Henry de Groot with the Boston Independent Drivers Guild.
You have to do your own expensing. For somebody who doesn't really understand, and I think most drivers probably don't fully understand or underestimate the actual cost of operating. When you first start working, it feels like you're making a lot of money. Because first of all, it's, often you're getting paid more than minimum wage in real terms, but then you're getting your expenses, where what's really your expenses that you don't realize, and you think it's profit. And so you might be getting $25, $27 an hour, and you think that's what you're making, but really you're making $19 an hour.
I wanted to see if there were any studies tied to why most drivers were in the dark about this information. And what better person to ask than qualitative researcher on the topic, Dr. Katy J. Wells.
They're not really sure where the other workers are. They're not sure what other workers are experiencing. It's difficult enough to navigate the changing rules that govern the workplace for workers, but it's a whole nother beast, which we didn't expect, to work somewhere and not have relationships with others.
This is the case for Chris Swanson. He drives for Lyft now because he was randomly deactivated from Uber and has been given the runaround from Uber's customer care team for months.
There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to drive for them. It makes no sense at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like some kind of glitch. It just says, when I turn on the app, it just says, we'll let you know when you can take rides. That's what it says. That's it, you know?
I asked Chris if he talked to any other drivers about this, and he said he didn't know anyone.
The people that I talk to, they say, well, we have to send it to internal, and then internal will call you back. But 2 weeks in a row, they haven't called me back.
He drove for Uber for 3 years and had a 5-star rating, so he didn't understand what he did to get this kind of mistreatment.
For some of our drivers, any setbacks they experience, they internalized as failures of their own doing. They say, oh, I wasn't smart enough to make a go of it. And so one thing that I think storytelling is really powerful for, and one thing we try to do with our workers, right, is allow them to hear each other's stories so they can recognize the structures within which they are operating.
And organizations like Boston Independent Drivers Guild and Chicago Rideshare Advocates want people to know they're actually working more for less. They also want people to know that Uber and Lyft business model is being adopted by other companies.
The more that we organized and the more people that we talked to, you know, it really became clear that this was a problem that spanned more than just rideshare drivers. It was delivery people. It was people using WAG. I mean, there's so many apps that do this now.
So how can drivers know how much they're really making? I asked Chris if he understood the breakdown of how much drivers are really earning.
Like, I understand how it works, but I would never spend all my time. It would take so long to audit that, you know what I mean? Because it's first of all, it's buried a little bit. You know, the receipt ledger, you got to go through several screens in the app to get to it, and then you're scrolling through all these numbers and you're trying to compare them. You know what I mean? Make sure that everything is on the up and up. It's almost not even worth it. You know what I mean? I spend enough time on the road already. I don't want to be like on the app for another 2 hours a week, like trying to figure out if they're trying to screw me or not.
This complicated process of finding a way to calculate your earnings is another stressor drivers are faced with. March 9th of 2021, the United States House of Representatives passed the Protecting the Right to Organize, or PRO Act, which would strengthen federal laws that protect workers. If passed, the PRO Act prevents misclassification of workers. A lot of the time, employers cheat by labeling their employees as independent contractors, so the PRO Act holds employers accountable. Massachusetts filed a lawsuit against Uber and Lyft, claiming they misclassified drivers as independent contractors rather than employees. And according to the businessinsight.com, Uber and Lyft requested to dismiss the lawsuit. Working as a driver means you don't have protections like labor rights, minimum wage, or paid sick time. But executive director and organizer Henry de Groot has found other ways to meet the needs of workers, like through the Rideshare Drivers Bill of Rights.
So what our bill does is it gives basic worker rights directly to drivers as drivers, and it mandates protections for flexibility, higher wages. It creates a grievance system that's copied off of Seattle, and it gives us a path to collective bargaining. It basically allows us to unionize through a state-level system.
The Rideshare Bill of Rights was developed with hundreds of rideshare drivers in Massachusetts to give raises and rights to the drivers regardless of category, and not wait for Uber and Lyft to deny their rights. In California, they passed a law in 2019 to make drivers employees, so drivers can earn benefits and get paid minimum wage for their time, but the companies still consider their drivers independent contractors. The only reason Uber and Lyft want drivers to stay classified as independent contractors is because it's cheaper for them. The companies decided to ask California voters to overrule lawmakers by paying for a campaign that encourages drivers to vote yes on Prop 22, and it worked. Prop 22 gives drivers new benefits, which are less than what employees get, but more of what drivers get today. It also includes a version of minimum wage for drivers. Driving time would be paid at least minimum wage plus 20%.
Prop 22 is a really, really dangerous precedent to set for people working in the gig economy. I mean, basically, they want to make a permanent third category of worker that's not really an employee, even though we're taking all the risks that a normal employee would take.
Driving time is about 2/3 of an app driver's workday. Prop 22 doesn't pay for the time you're waiting.
Most of the waiting time is sitting, waiting. So yeah, you may make $20 for a ride, but yet they have the mathematical equation to make you sit and wait longer because they want you there longer, because it's their business model to have as many drivers on the road as long as possible. It's not about the drivers.
But fortunately, there are drivers across the world speaking up about this. Henry from the Boston Independent Drivers Guild will remain in the fight until rights are met.
The fight of the rideshare drivers is the fight of the working class.
People are out there, trying to feed their families, and suddenly they're left without any options. It's a really scary thing.
This fight is not only about lifting up the living conditions of millions of app-based workers around the country and across the state of Massachusetts. It's about holding back and fighting back against the corporate onslaught of basic labor rights in this country.
The gig economy is full of people like you and me. People who just want to earn a decent living and be able to support themselves and their families. With more drivers speaking out about their experiences and organizations forming, gig workers have a chance at getting everything they're asking for and everything they deserve. For more information, you can visit the Labor Center's website, www.umassd.edu/labored.